King's Barn. There was once, dear maidens, a king in Sussex, of whose kingdom and possessions nothing remained but a single barn and a change of linen. It was no fault of his. He was a very young king when he came into his heritage, and it was already dwindled to these proportions. Once his fathers had owned a beautiful city on the banks of the Ader, and all the lands to the north and the west were theirs, for a matter of several miles indeed, including many strange things that were on them, such as the Wappingthorpe, the Huddlestone, the bush hovel where a wise woman lived, and the Guestgate. Likewise those two communities, known as the Doves and the Hawking Soapers, whose ways of life were as opposite as the poles. The Doves were simple men and religious, but the Hawking Soapers were indeed a wild and rowdy crew, and it is said that the king's father had hunted and drunk with them until his estates were gambled away, and his affairs decayed of neglect, and nothing was left at last but the solitary barn, which marked the northern boundary of his possessions. And here, when his father was dead, our young king sat on a tussock of hay, with his golden crown on his head and his golden sceptre in his hand, and ate bread and cheese thrice a day, throwing the rind to the rats and the crumbs to the swallows. His name was William, and beyond the rats and the swallows he had no other company than a nag called Pepper, whom he fed daily from the tussock he sat on. But at the end of a week he said, "It is a dull life. What should a king do in a barn?" So saying, he pulled the last handful of hay from under him, rising up quickly before he had time to fall down, and gave it to his nag. And next he tied up his sceptre and crown with his change of linen in a blue handkerchief. And last he fetched a rope and a sack, and put them on Pepper for bridle and saddle, and rode out of the barn, leaving the door to swing. "Let us go south, Pepper," said he, "for it is warmer to ride into the sun than away from it, and so we shall visit my father's lands that might have been mine." South they went, with the great downs ahead of them, and who knew what beyond? And first they came to the Hawking Soapers, who when they saw William approaching tumbled out of their dwelling with a great racket, crying to him to come and drink and play with them. "Not I," said he, "for so I should lose my barn to you, and such as it is a shelter, and my only one. But tell me, if you can, what should a king do in a barn?" "He should dance in it," said they, and went laughing and singing back to their cups. "What sort of advice is this, Pepper?" said the king. "Shall we try elsewhere?" The nag whinnied with unusual vehemence, and the king, taking this for yea, and not observing that she limped as she went, rode on to the Doves, the gentle, grey-gowned brothers, who spent their days in pious works and their nights in meditation. Between the 12 hours of twilight and dawn they were pledged not to utter speech, but the king arriving there at noon, they welcomed him with kind words, and offered him a bowl of rice and milk. He thanked them, and when he had eaten and drunk, put to them his riddle. "What should a king do in a barn?" They answered, "He should pray in it." "This may be good advice," said the king. "Pepper, should we go farther?" The little nag whinnied till her sides shook, which the king took as before to be an affirmative. However, because it was Sunday, he remained with the Doves a day and a night, and during such time as their lips were not sealed, they urged him to become one of them, and found a new settlement of brothers in his barn. He spent his night in reflection, but by morning had come to no decision. "To what better use could you dedicate it?" asked the chief brother, who was known as the ring-dove because he was the leader. "None that I can think of," said the king, "but I fear I am not good enough." "When you have passed our initiation," said the ring-dove, "you will be." "Is it difficult?" asked William. "No, it is very easy, and can be accomplished within a month. You have only to ride south till you come to the hills, on the highest of which you will see a ring of beech trees. Under the hills lies the little village of Washington, and there you may dwell in comfort through the week. But on each of the 4 Saturdays of the lunar month, you must mount the hill at sunset, and keep a vigil among the beeches till sunrise. And you must see that these Saturdays occur on the 4 quarters of the moon, once when she is in her crescent, once at the half, again at the full, and lastly when she is waning." "And is this all?" said William. "It sounds very simple." "Not quite all, but the rest is nearly as simple. You have but to observe 4 rules. First, to tell no living soul of your resolve during the month of initiation. Second, to keep your vigil always between the 2 great beeches in the middle of the ring. Third, to issue forth at midnight, and immerse your head in the dew pond which lies on the hilltop to the west, and having done so, to return to your watch between the trees. And fourth, to make no utterance on any account whatever, from sunset to sunrise." "Suppose I should sneeze?" inquired the king anxiously. "There's no supposing about it," said the ringdove. "Sneezing, seeing that your head will be extremely wet, is practically inevitable. But the rule applies only to such utterance as lies within human control. When the 4th vigil has been successfully accomplished, return to us for a blessing and the grey robe of our order." "But how," asked the king, "during my vigils shall I know when midnight is due?" "In the 3rd quarter after 11 a bird sings. At the beginning of its song go forth from the ring, and at the end plunge your head into the pond. For on these nights the bird sings ceaselessly for 15 minutes, but stops at the very moment of midnight." "And is this really all?" "This is all." "How easy it is to become good," said William cheerfully. "I will begin at once." So impatient was he to become a brother dove. But here Martin Pippin broke off abruptly, and catching the rope of the swing in his left hand, he gave it a great lurch. Joan. "Oh, oh, oh!" Martin. "I perceive, Mistress Joan, that you lose interest in my story. Your mouth droops." Joan. "Oh no, it is a very nice story, but—" Martin. "What cannot be said aloud can frequently be whispered." He leaned his ear close to her mouth, and very shyly she whispered into it. Joan, whispering very shyly. "Why must the young king join a brotherhood? I thought this was to be a love story." Martin smiled, and chose an apple from her lap. "Keep this for me," said he, "until I ask for it, and if you are not then satisfied, neither will I be." So impatient, resumed Martin, was the king to enter the brotherhood, that he abandoned his idea of visiting the Huddlestone and the Wappingthorpe, which would have taken him out of his course, and without even waiting to break his fast, leapt onto Pepper's back, and turned her head southwest towards the hills. And in his eagerness he failed to remark how Pepper stumbled at every second step. Before he had gone a mile he came to the guest gate,